Okay, so I'm recording a video specifically about metadata because there are a lot of comments about whether so-and-so, whether it's George Webb or whomever, whether we're to trust them and what they say. The whole exercise here with George Webb, and I have to say with Dr. Judy Wood too, who actually introduced me to a lot of these concepts several years ago, is that we don't trust the messenger, that we do our own research, and we've gotten to be so dumbed down. I myself included, and I don't necessarily like that turn of phrase, but it's the only way that I can describe how it is for those of us that expect somebody to feed us, basically spoon feed us, all the information, and then we pass judgment on it. Well, I believe this person, I don't believe that person, and it lends itself to all sorts of speculation, assumptions. And one of the things that I'm working on myself as a journalist is the idea of inhabituating. And in fact, I have a website called inhabituate.com. And I am working on that right now. It's not functional yet, but one of the things that I think is really important is to get ourselves out of habits, whether, they could be really good habits, but, you can continue on with good habits once you've gone through the practice of ridding yourself, and I'm speaking to myself here, of all of the things that we presume to be true. And I find this really interesting because we listen to mainstream media and they talk about the Russian narrative never having provided one iota of evidence, metadata. And this trains us to understand things through the lens of someone that we call an expert. Now, I was raised to trust experts myself, and in the old days, we actually could. There were a lot of experts that were telling the truth, and we probably were hearing a lot of things that were true. However, embedded in those things are falsehoods, are things that are not empirically true. Let's talk about the word empirical. Empirical just means that it's provable, and it's something that we can actually go back and we can say, you see, this isn't just my opinion. There is some evidence to back me up. Now, even science is not a good way of backing up our ideas. I have a cousin, I've told this story to people and I think it's a really good one. I have a cousin who's a nuclear physicist, and I spoke to him when I was about 17 years old. He was quite a bit older than me, and he was already working as a professor in that field. And he said, we don't really know what causes gravity to do what it does. And there is a difference between the effects of gravity. We can actually calculate how quickly things fall to the ground, for instance. But there was a question as to how that phenomenon takes place. And it's something, whether it's Isaac Newton or whether it's Einstein or whomever, it's always been a question, and it has not been answered. There's still questions about it. So I said to him, well, if I said to you that God holds all things together, it would be just as plausible as some of the science that people are looking at. And he said, yeah, it's absolutely just as plausible. He said, if you get to a certain point in your scientific study, it becomes a matter of faith in a lot of ways, that we're living in a world that we don't really understand completely at all. I mean, that's an understatement. So if we take that as our guideline, everything needs to be studied. Everything needs to be looked at for its deeper content. Now, I have this document, which I'm actually going to put into the description area. It's a 49 page document. It's a PDF file, and it may be helpful. I'm hoping that this will be helpful because it's just again, it's empirical. It's not, what I mean by empirical is it's not meant to favor any position. It is just the raw information that has been sussed out by a certain group of people, and it's just an explanation. So I'm trying to bring it down to its most basic level so that we can just get a sense of how the world uses this thing called metadata. So this is pretty straightforward. It's called Understanding Metadata. What is metadata and what is it for? And it's written by a Jen Riley and National Information Standards Organization. So I thought, to me, this seems like a really good impartial way of explaining things that are a bit confusing for me, for anybody talking about this subject. So this is a primer or primer, depending on your particular way of pronouncing that. And it goes through all of this. So I'm going to sort of skip through. It has a lot of contents here. It's quite interesting, and what I would like to share with you as my audience is the ability to understand this concept, first of all, and understand that whether we're watching somebody else, listening to somebody else, reading a book, or doing our own research, this is what we're really looking at when it comes to deciding what we believe and what we don't believe, because it really comes down to that. Nobody can tell us what to believe. Nobody can impart it without us actually having to do the hard work of looking into it somewhat ourselves. So as I scroll down here, there is an introduction. So I'm going to put on my glasses and I'm going to read this. Consider how retailers store information about their products and their consumers, employers about their employees and their operations, organizations about events they manage, research institutions about trends and notable people in their area, libraries, archives, and museums about the materials in their care, governments about their citizens, their allies, and their enemies. This is all metadata. Metadata, the information we create, store, and share to describe things, allows us to interact with these things to obtain the knowledge we need. The classic definition is literal, based on the etymology of the word itself. Metadata is data about data. With this broad definition, one might expect that metadata could be found everywhere, and in fact it is. Indeed, in 2013, I think this is probably circa 2013, metadata became a household term in the United States through heavy media coverage of the National Security Agency's, the NSA's, collection of information on domestic phone calls, including time and location initiated, duration, and number dialed. All right, well, that to me seemed like a pretty good introduction. Metadata is pervasive in information systems and comes in many forms. The core features of most software packages we use every day are metadata driven. People listen to music through Spotify, post photos on Instagram, locate video on YouTube, manage finances through Quicken, connect with others via email, text, and social media, and store lengthy contact lists on their mobile devices. All of this content comes with metadata information about the item's creation, name, topic, features, and the like. Okay, so one of the things that we could probably relate to, I suppose, is the idea of a camera. It's called the EXIF information, and if we take, our photographs off our camera and put it onto a computer, we can have a look at the data that's been created in just capturing a photograph. The aperture, the exposure, the date, everything's there. It's all there. And that's why courts actually allow this kind of information, because you can bring in a photograph and you can bring in the EXIF information, that's metadata, and it is considered to be a legal way of providing evidence. So again, it's evidence-based, it's empirical. So when we're looking at say a video, and I'm going to specifically say, in this case, the George Webb series. It's the, Hillary's henchman, and it started off with Where is Eric Braverman. He talks about metadata a lot, and then people continually say, am I supposed to just believe this guy? Am I supposed to just go along with it? He's trying to teach us about the concept in the way that he's unraveling things. The reason that he is so, well, he's quite smart to begin with, and that helps. He's a bright guy, and he's got a lot of connections around the world. And he uses those connections, and what he's trying to do is he's crowdsourcing information, he's crowdsourcing an investigation. This is not just him, and he'll say it right away. He takes the information that he gets from people, he does his investigative work to see how true it is. He provokes people sometimes. He asks questions to see how authentic people are. And he's showing us how to do it ourselves. He's not saying, believe me. However, when you look at the evidence, the proof's in the pudding, and you see that he breaks a story, breaks a part of the story, breaks something, on his series, and then what happens on Capitol Hill? You'll see people trying to cover it up. So doesn't that, to me, that is an indication that there's something happening, and there's something that is touching a nerve. Because like all of us, as soon as somebody says something that is getting a little bit too close to the truth that we're trying to hide, we start to do a cover-up. So when we look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz starting to do her threats, we see bodies washed up on the beach in areas where investigations are taking place. These are not coincidences. And if we believe they are, it's best not to be involved in this kind of work or investigation. Do stand back, do be skeptical, and that's fine. It's just not probably something that you're going to want to get involved with personally. There's danger involved in this. And one of the things that I do with Character Driven, my radio show, and anything that I'm doing on the internet or anywhere else, is I'm interested in the people behind the stories that are the people that are making a difference in the world, because most of them have nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward. They're doing it out of a sense of duty or a sense of loyalty or a sense of honor. Those are the people I'm really interested in. So that's what attracted me to George Webb in the first place. And I just use my spidey senses. I use all of the different things that I have available to me as a thinking human being to come to bear on that situation. But I really would like it if people would download this and pass it along to folks, because again, I'm not really interested in defending people. I'm not interested in that, and I don't want anyone to defend me. And a lot of what the people who are trying to control us and control the message are doing, the controllers of the world, really want us to get at each other's throats. And I've talked about this before. But as soon as we start doing that, we've lost our audience. It's not about having people come over to our point of view. It's about having people do their own study and investigation and come to their own conclusions, which may coincide with ours. If it doesn't, at least we can have an intelligent discussion, and we're not name-calling. As soon as it gets into name-calling, ad hominem stuff, we've lost. And it's like a play. Over here we have people arguing and fighting, while in the shadows, the scene's being changed. And coming from a theater background, that makes a lot of sense to me, because that's the art of distraction is exactly how we do theater. It's a bit of smoke and mirrors, but it's very easy to distract people. Like a magic show, you have the beautiful woman, and meanwhile the magician is doing things while you're looking at what she's doing. The magician's doing all sorts of things behind the scenes. And so none of this is new. None of it is that difficult to understand. But when we keep going back and keep focusing in and watching what's happening in the shadows, that's where the metadata is. It's metadata. I think I say it differently every time, but it doesn't matter. We don't need the whole email. We don't need all of Hillary's email, you know, the content of it. But to be able to figure out what was happening with Benghazi or with any of the things that were taking place and the communications, we see a pattern, or we see things fit into the scenario that, you know, sometimes it's okay for us just to come up with a scenario based on our best information. The metadata is going to lead us further down that path, or it's going to say, no, we're going the wrong way. And that's all we need to look at. Try not to have assumptions. Try not to have expectations. All of those things are to fit into a small box. Open up the box and allow it to go where it wants to. It can be scary, and it's a challenge, because we're taught not to do that. We're taught to listen to the teacher. The teacher has all the answers, and if you don't get the answer right, then, you know, there's no other option. So this is just a document that will help to give us an overview, like it says, a primer on what metadata is and how it's used in our world. And I'm hoping that this will help you, as it's helped me, to get a sense of where we need to go when we're doing an investigation, where we need to go, what questions we need to ask, how to fill in the gaps, that sort of thing. So I hope this was helpful, and if it was helpful, please subscribe and pass it along to other people. I think what I'm trying to do with this particular series, or, you know, when I put up something that is in response to questions that I get, it's because I want as many people as possible to see it, so that we don't have to keep repeating ourselves and answering the same thing over and over again. This is one that comes up quite a bit, and again, we don't necessarily have to believe the person who is giving us the information. We believe the things they're bringing forward, the information, the metadata that is going to buoy up their particular perspective. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I really appreciate all of you guys, and I so appreciate all of the folks that have been involved in the George Webb series, and who've tuned in to my less than stellar live YouTube events, and I'm hoping to get better at that. And I so appreciate just having the interest and the support of all of you, and I hope that you just continue to be your own best sleuths and investigators. I know it takes some time, but that's basically what I'm doing here. I'm committing as much of my time and energy as I can to getting to the truth.